Hello and good afternoon to everyone. What I have planned for the 10 minutes that I have here is to run very quickly through what I call the maturity model for education. It's a mixed feeling that I am trying to kind of convey here. One part is about the fact that education has become a very advanced and a very complicated subject of inquiry today. However, the practice of education still remains fairly nascent, and I'm not really going to get into much of trying to explain where I am kind of coming from in terms of what the challenges in higher education are. But the point to be very clearly understood here for ourselves is that the education has always been seen as a gateway for the students to find something better for themselves. The earlier speakers spoke about that as well. What I am bringing here is that in terms of the key challenges, if we look at the academic challenges, we all know that right from the curriculum to the pedagogy, there has been a challenge in education. At the institute level, we are talking about excellence, repute, and credibility in the education. At the industry level, we are talking about the disconnect and disalignment. And economics as well, there is a huge challenge. So what we are trying to do here is to tell you that when we talk about a process-based setup, CMM is a very well understood and acknowledged process tool which helps the IT industry become mature. And it is a very simple kind of a thing what we are talking about. I'm again not going to spend much of time talking about CMM because I presume quite a few of you would be aware of it. And if not, I will strongly recommend that you take some time and go through the Software Engineering Institute's CMM model, which talks about the maturity levels in there. What is more important for us to understand is that CMM's contribution specific to Indian IT industry is what we see today as India becoming the hub for IT software production. What CMM basically did is to some faraway client, it told them that we have not just the capability of producing that software, but producing it at the level of quality that you wanted, at the cost that we are basically acknowledging it to be. Now, coming to why is it basically relevant for education to understand that, I have a bit of a background in IT. I actually worked in one of the big IT companies in the country, and I by training have been a faculty. I used to be a faculty at a few of the colleges in India and abroad. So I see a lot of commonality between the IT industry and the education sector. Starting from the promise of delivery, that is something that you basically give as a form of a degree or in form of a software which you say is going to improve your performance. So that is basically the premise, and you can actually get into the levels of detail. You will find it in the paper that I submitted, which I presume would be posted on the website sometime. And there I have actually gone into the detail of why it is relevant for the CMM to, or why is there a commonality between education and the software sector. But here what I am talking about is a very simple thing. Both of them are process driven, and education process is a very simple thing. We are talking about input process, input for faculty, input for students, and input for capability. We are talking about institute systems and processes, that is academics, research, and consulting. You will find a flavor more towards a management education because that is what my area of specialization is. And then, of course, there is an outcome process which is to do with the placement, reputation, and network. Going on with the specifics of how the education is currently evaluated, there is only two aspects that I could find, rather than getting into much of the detail there. One is essentially the regulation and compliances, which is what we talk about, regulators giving you standards which you must comply with. And the second one is basically rankings. Now these rankings are something which is slightly misused, or rather I will say that it has not really become as popular in the Indian context because the numbers keep changing, and there have been a lot of reports about how it gets manipulated as well. So what is more important for us to understand is that we need to bridge the gap. And the gap is that evaluation should be in a manner so that it enhances the complete capability of the institution as they go through the evaluation process. And that is what actually CMM also does. So we are talking about process maturity, process capability, and the process performance, which is nothing but developing a whole series of aspects which relate to in CMM. For example, we use of process alignment, accountability, transparency, objectivity, motivation, employee development, and the decision support systems. Now, you coming from education sector, no, it is as equally relevant for education as it is for the IT industry here. While the process include resource and competency, communication, coordination, performance, and so on and so forth. But again, that is again equally relevant. So what I did was I actually distilled this down to find out the 5 critical areas which I feel are the metrics that an educational institute should follow. And this is something which I have actually been able to develop by collapsing a lot of metrics that I found from internal sources, from some of the research, from some of the other areas. You will find some more of the detail in the paper that I have submitted there. We talk about 5 critical areas here. The first one being intellect. I'll be explaining a bit of the detail on that. Intellect, infrastructure, industry tie-up, institutionalization, and internationalization. Now again, these are slightly skewed towards management, but I would like to kind of submit to you that you can actually do a bit of a customization and make it relevant for any of the other sectors as well. The detail what we are talking about in terms of intellect, what we are talking about is academic training, the student, that is inbound quality of student, performance of students, research publishing, centers of excellence. Infrastructure I have broken down into 2, hardware and the software. The hard infrastructure we all know can be bought by the money. The soft infrastructure, which is basically the key challenge where we are talking about the quality of faculty, the quality of learning, etc. Institute quality of life, for instance. So these are again a bit more difficult to understand. Industry linkages, very simply broken into 2, what is the value you offer to the industry and what support does industry grant to you. Again, simplistic thing which again has its own component to assess it. Institutionalization, what we are talking about is what kind of university affiliations do you have, what kind of alumni network do you have, what is the network strength in community, etc. And finally, the internationalization in terms of academics, international placements, and international tie-ups and exchanges. So this framework will basically reveal the core areas of an educational institute, and you can be actually monitored on the basis of these subcomponents. In effect, what you are going to get is an approach which will help you in terms of first go on to identify your stakeholders and their needs. What is the process flow? What are the key variables that you would like to kind of define these variable components I told you about? How do you measure and control them? And finally, what are the specifications to drive the enhancements? When you implement this, you will get something of this sort, which I call the radar view of the thing. And in fact, I'm on my last slide, incidentally. So this is basically the 5, the radar view, what we are talking about. And depending upon what your capabilities are, you will actually get your polygon inside. While there is another one, which is the benchmark, which could be a regional benchmark, which could be a particular functional benchmark. Like if you are in business school teaching, what is the benchmark for a business school, etc. And that is what you basically get onto. And then you also get into creating what your target benchmarks or your target levels are. And that eventually will push you towards the betterment in there. So the key pointer simply is that you need a complete buy-in. It's like any of the other implementation of processes that we are talking about. But my whole point here is simple, that when actually ERP, which is supposed to be the prime engine for IT in the corporates, came into the being, one of the things which any consultant would come and tell you was that please make sure that you re-engineer processes. Otherwise, the ERP is going to make your inefficiencies faster, and therefore the organization will kind of kill itself faster. So maybe it is time for us to start thinking about re-engineering the processes that run the education and then get into a maturity map here. Thanks a lot. So that is basically my talk for you. If there are any questions, I have my mail ID. We'll be happy to take it anytime. Thank you so much.